testing.
Like one. What does the arrow say next to on? Hi, Paul. This is a test. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you want me to sing too?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
No, thank you, Paul, but we appreciate the offer.
Yeah, I had a whole repertoire ready to go. Howdy.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you? Yeah, me too. You do have a lot of meetings.
Hello, everyone. We're calling the meeting to order at 1:02. And we just learned that Chair Doyle and Commissioner Cahill will be a few minutes late, but we are going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. Are there any public appearances, comments?
Vice Chair Green, can you please call the roll of commissioners in attendance?
See, I didn't know I was going to have to do this. Yes. Okay.
Just
count
on Lisa whenever you don't know.
And I do. Chair Doyle, Commissioner Cahill, Commissioner Lagos. Sorry, Commissioner Goldberg here, Commissioner Engbars
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie here, Commissioner Green here.
And Commissioner Heavenridge is attending remotely.
Okay.
I am here.
Thank you. Okay. Now, we have a member of the community who would like to address us.
Where would you like me to do that? So, Paul is here. Over here.
Testing, testing. Okay. And Vice Chair Green, would you like to let people know about the time limit for public comment?
Yes, 3 minutes for public comment, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Cuda, and I'm the Vice President of the Sonoma County Library Foundation, and I chair the Fund Development Committee. And I also serve on the Measure W Executive Committee. I'm here today in support of a 15,000 square foot Roseland Library. I want to share a larger consideration regarding the importance of supporting a first-class library for Roseland. And this is the difference between a 10,000 foot and 15,000 square foot facility. We are experiencing in the Roseland Project becoming an inspirational goal, bringing donors from throughout our county and beyond. Our foundation is building a philanthropic base that will power the transformation of the entire system and propel it for years to come in the future. This partnership can support upgrades throughout the system to meet current and future needs. We are lifting the Sonoma County Library Foundation into a significant leader that can advance and modernize our entire library system into the 21st century. This includes being a major underwriter in the effort to extend the library sale tax through Measure W. This involves the major effort we are undertaking in bringing hundreds of donors to our vision for a better library. The fact is, a 10,000 square foot library is not an inspiring goal. The 10,000 foot library will not fulfill the promise to our donors to include space and resources for the empowering and uplifting programs that will draw participants to this library from throughout the county. The Roseland Library is almost 10 years in the making and much longer in our community's aspirations. Please see your decision on what kind of a library we will build in Roseland as a significant step for the entire Sonoma County Library's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Yes. You have a 3-minute limit. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Commission. This is Pamela Van Helsema. I'm the chair of the Santa Rosa Library Advisory Board, and I just wanted to urge you to seriously consider the biggest and best library that we can build in Roseland. Roseland is, if you have studied the Portrait of Sonoma County or certainly been a resident of this area for a long time, which I think many of you are, you know this is the place that needs it most. This is the place that will use it most. This is the place that you will see progress grow when you offer the resources that are so very well much needed there. And having something that doesn't have enough meeting space, doesn't have enough place to play, doesn't have enough place to celebrate the cultural diversity that's so rich and powerful in that part of our city. This is a place that is now annexed to our city that is infrastructure poor. This is going to be a major asset to add to the infrastructure and cultural vitality and foundation to make that part of our city grow and thrive. And so don't shortcut it. Think big, think future, and have faith that we're going to be able to do it and do it well.
Thank you, Pamela. Are there any other public comments? Okay, so we are ready to get started with presentations. Right, let's see. Oh, yes.
Providing questions and having questions that would be reviewed at this meeting. And at least I know with my list and assuming with Barbara's and Andy's, those questions were not, even though they were to be an item discussed today, they were deleted or not included in the agenda, even though they were sent well in advance of the time to schedule them on the agenda. So I'm making an objection to that, and I'm asking that those questions be made available to the public, since they are public records.
I'm gonna let our legal counsel respond to that.
I don't have your agenda packet in front of me, but Commissioner Engbar, I think you're saying that the questions that you'd sent in are not contained in the packet?
No, they were submitted for the record, and they're not contained in the packet.
So
nor are they
there,
publicly available.
right, are there not questions in the packet? I thought there was a document that I thought that was in a sort of an accumulation of all the questions.
No, they're not included in the packet.
Well, you can those documents certainly can be made available to the public if that's your preference.
Yes.
Okay. Then I think they would be public records, and so I think they can be available upon request.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Thank you. I have two questions. One, in the agenda that we got, did it talk about a presentation?
Yes, it has, the presentation is agendized.
Okay, it was. It didn't just go straight to discussion from public comment.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the other thing is, Jeff, we got a note, an email that said, council said that we cannot distribute these questions that people had, blah, 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 blah. So I assume that was you? Or is there another council?
No,
Because we got an email
that
talking
would be
about
me. I think there was a question about distributing them or making them available to the public before the agenda was distributed. I don't, and I'm not sure what document you're looking at, so I don't.
It was just an email. Erica, you know, that email?
Yeah, my understanding was that Chair Doyle sent out an email saying that the purpose of the meeting is to have all our deliberations in public, and that sharing the questions and any responses in that would not be consistent with that.
Right, you were
they
talking
could have
about
been
sharing them out.
involved in the packet.
Right. Distributing them ahead of time to the public is what I thought we were talking about. I'm at a little bit of a loss because I don't have the.
I think you're right. I think it was about distributing ahead of time, but if those questions were submitted, how come they never got in for the public? I understand about not ahead of time. So what happened to the questions?
I can read the email that Chair Doyle sent out. It says, I look forward to seeing you at our special commission meeting Thanks to several of you who sent questions to clarify. I asked for them to ensure that staff can provide as many answers as possible at the special meeting. I am not sending the questions, accompanying assumptions, and comments because the commission should be having its conversations and discussions in public meetings.
And that I did, yes, and I did tell the chair that I agree with that. We do always have to be mindful of the potential for a serial Brown Act violation if we start exchanging documents ahead of time and having people then submit their own comments on comments or suggested responses to questions or additional questions prompted by having read someone else's questions. So while it is one thing to have individual commission members provide staff with questions so that staff is ready with answers, and that's perfectly fine. That's not uncommon. What I did want to avoid is a multiple rounds of exchanges of comments and reactions to comments among commissioners, which could very easily inadvertently lead to a Brown Act violation because you won't necessarily know how many people have responded to which one. If that makes sense. You know, if 4 sets of comments get sent out and 2 commissioners respond to all of them, pretty soon you now know how 6 people feel about it, and you could easily see where that could lead to a problem.
Does that answer your question?
No, but I'm done.
Okay, Commissioner Engbar?
Yeah, Jeff, in the documents that were submitted, at least the ones that I've submitted, and I think so with the others, but I can't speak for them. I've submitted them specifically for the record, and I've submitted them in response to a request to submit questions before that would be placed in the agenda before the meeting the agenda got posted. So my expectation was, as any other document, that it would be placed as an item that would be available to the public when the public was reviewing the agenda to see what was going to be on the agenda, and that we would talk about the questions here at the meeting. And without that, I think the public is left without really knowing what at least one commissioner had as far as questions about the issue that's before us today, and other commissioners that wanted them to be discussed at the meeting at today's meeting, and those questions aren't available to the public.
Right, and I understand what you're saying. I think the email that was read aloud, I think Erica read, it didn't say they were going to be distributed to the public, and you know, without getting into the nuances of what people understood was going to happen, it is not a common practice to invite members of a legislative body to share in advance their comments and questions because of the possibility that it creates a Brown Act issue, or at least the perception of an issue. And so I urged caution in terms of how broadly information is distributed. So I may have contributed to it not being in the packet. That wasn't specifically my intent, but that may have been how my comments were interpreted.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yeah, I just want to ask about time. I've been concerned all along that we're only talking about an hour for this meeting. And now we only have 45 minutes and we have a presentation. I want to know how long we can go. So how long the room's reserved for.
We can find out. Okay, we'll find out how long. Yeah. And we can have another meeting too.
Well, this is kind of the big one to answer all our questions. We don't even know what the questions are yet. So, because we didn't get them in advance. Anyway, as long as we are not planning on going home, leaving at 2, that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Engbarth?
Yes, at least with the questions I've submitted and in the discussions we've had at past meetings, my issue is not with the project. I mean, I think it's a wonderful plan. It's a great project, and Roseland definitely needs a new library. But it's with the commission's the commission's operations is that what policies do we have? What are we doing with the types of money we're getting? Whether the money we're using is restricted and unrestricted, all the things that were in the questions. Those are things that I'm looking for answers to today, not to see a presentation of what the library might be or could be or is planned to be in the future. I was seeing today as an opportunity to have a candid discussion about questions.
Address many of your questions in our presentation. And those questions that we don't address, you are free to ask
But when?
today.
Today. Okay, we only have, as Barbara pointed out, a little bit of a time today to do that. So how long is the presentation on the library plan?
We haven't timed.
And we are finding out if we can be here longer, and if we are, it would be great to have a quick break to put some money in the meters and hope we can stay. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to move on to the presentations.
I get recorded that I raised that and that the questions that were submitted are not here at the agenda when we were making those available, at least when I was making those available for the public review at this meeting.
Just the size of the slide so that it's an obscure. Okay.
All right, so let me begin. We are going to give you a little bit of history of the Roseland project. Our fund development manager is going to address the foundation's role and what the donors were told as part of the fundraising. Our CFO is going to talk about our fund balance and our available fund balance for budgeting. I'm going to address the questions about the JPA and the Measure Y expenditure plan, and we will take your questions after that. So first, I want to acknowledge we do have a guest here, Brian Anastasio from Kitchell Project Management. They are the firm that was hired by the City of Santa Rosa to manage this project. He is just here to answer any questions that I am unable to answer. I just want to start off by saying that, I recognize that this is not the perfect project. It is not in the perfect location. It is not it's not the perfect size, and it's not the perfect time before the renewal of our sales tax measure is certain. But sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. We have to make the best decision we can with the information we have available. And given all of the funding deadlines for this project, including a $10 million fund, $10 million in ARPA funds that expire in December, as well as $5 million from the state that have to be encumbered by the end of January, my personal opinion and my best educated recommendation is that this particular project has our best chance for success in building a new library in Roseland. This is a good location. It's a growing and thriving community. It's a good size comparable to the Rincon Valley Library, and it's a good time. Sonoma County Library is financially healthy, and we know that we have extremely high support around the county for our services, and we have an excellent chance of getting our sales tax funding renewed. All projects experience problems. This project is no different, but we are in a unique position to provide funds to bridge the gap to get this library built on time and uphold the promises and the commitment we have made to the Roseland community. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ray Hawley, who's going to talk about the history of the current library and how we got here.
Thank you. I see Chair Doyle's here. Commissioners, Director Tebow, our guests. I'm Ray Hawley, as Erica said, and I'm pushing the button. I have this magical power that I overcome the abilities of this presenting tool. Okay, now the green light's on. And it still doesn't work. Could you advance the slide, Lisa? All right, so I've got a few slides. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. The purpose of my part of the presentation is to gain a common understanding of how we got to where we are. So I'll just say personally that I grew up in South Park in Santa Rosa, right across the freeway. And we did our business in Roseland. We shopped at Food City. We banked at Exchange Bank. We bought shoes at Santa Rosa Shoe. We bowled at the bowling alley. I'm very familiar with Roseland personally. And what happened after World War II, after the middle part of the 20th century, is that Roseland began an economic decline. It struggled. The fishery closed. The big fish processing plant closed. Other manufacturers closed. The community began to experience job loss and people moving away. There were health and income, educational disparities. There was a lack of investment. The county was basically not paying a lot of attention to Roseland. In a previous job, I worked in community health, and I was on the advisory board for the first portrait of Sonoma in 2014. And of the 99 census tracts in Sonoma County that were studied, the two lowest census tracts were Roseland and Roseland Creek. They had the lowest human development potential studied in there. And that was really distressing, but it galvanized a lot of things. Around the same time, a little before that, the Roseland Library Coalition formed. Pat was part of that, and lots of other volunteers. People began to talk about the needs, all the various needs that were happening in Roseland. Santa Rosa began to talk about annexing Roseland. There were lots of studies, lots of plans. Dwayne DeWitt just showed up. He was on a lot of those committees that studied a lot of things. And there was a growing recognition that equity, diversity, inclusion might actually be important, and that Roseland was a place that belonged in Santa Rosa and that needed to be part of Santa Rosa and needed a parity of services, needed the same kind of services that other people in Santa Rosa needed. All right. The Roseland Library Coalition, as I mentioned, and other community leadership organizations began to talk about a library. Over a period of 2013 and 14, the library was able to acquire the use of a space in the former shopping center. It was a drafty old former furniture store. There were, let me put it this way, there were rats and mice. The rat and mouse traps were full every morning. The roof leaked, it was drafty, it was leaky. And when the library opened in 2015, the community embraced it. The community loved that library and really embraced it. And we saw as a library that it was really important. Here's a few photos. I want to point to the one on the right. That's Jose Luis Orozco. He's actually coming back. His initials are JLO. I found out this week the staff calls him JLO. I showed up at that library. That's a picture that I took on a rainy weekday morning, and there were 450 people in that library to see that entertainer. And that's what woke me up around Roseland's ability, willingness, and eagerness to embrace a library and a community gathering space. Things began to grow. Things began to change. We got our sales tax funding. The annexation was completed in 2017. Not long after that, 2018 and 20, Santa Rosa shifted to district-based elections, which was a really big deal because Roseland suddenly had its own advocate. There was increased outreach to all kinds of partners. You can see Ed Sheffield in the middle of this photo, pledging Sutter's support to a permanent library for Roseland. That's just one example of lots of people who stepped up. We had Congressman Thompson in that building. We had all kinds of things happening there. And we got momentum. The city and the library both agreed to figure out how to invest in Roseland. Around that time, there was the tragic Tubbs fire, which resulted in a PG&E settlement, and Santa Rosa, with help and support and urging from a lot of people in this room, allocated millions and millions of dollars to a permanent library in Roseland. And we opened it on September 13th, 2021, just a year and a half into the pandemic. We were without a library in Roseland, by the way, for a number of months because the COVID required the closure of that county-owned building, the old furniture store. They nudged us out and put in a vaccination clinic there. There were a series of community needs assessment paid for by the city of Santa Rosa. The first entity to conduct those assessments is called Ross Drulis Kusenberry, and that's not a typo. They do run all their names together like that. They held a big block party at one of the schools. They had 6 more community workshops and meetings. There were online surveys. There were all kinds of assessment tools. They recorded feedback from 7,000 people. Group 4 Architecture came along next and took over in the community needs assessment. There were more community workshops. They did pop-up survey kiosks at the library, at the Matote Food Park, at the Finley Center, at the Farmers Market, and online. And 900 plus people gave feedback during those community needs assessment. As you can see from this photo, more momentum started to build. We heard when we opened the temporary Roseland Library that State Assembly member Mark Levine had allocated $1 million to the project. His successor, Damon Connolly, has taken that on and shepherding that through. State Senator, at the time State Senator, now Senate President Pro Tem Mike McGuire, brought us $5 million, which was announced at this event here. And around that time, we had a closed session, which I guess I'll divulge a few details from it now, with the Library Commission. We've been asked, how did we end up at Hearn? In January of 2022, the former library director and myself met with the commission in closed session. A lot of you were there, and we outlined 4 potential locations for the Roseland Regional Library. One of them was the former Roseland Collegiate Prep. That was just down the street, a little bit closer to downtown Santa Rosa from where we are now. We were outbid on that. It was purchased by a cannabis company. The second possible location was a parking lot owned by the Exchange Bank right behind where we are now. Pretty small parking lot. In order to make it work, we would have had to build up 2 or maybe even 3 stories, and there would have been very little parking. It would have been a very expensive project. The other 2 were what is now known as the Tierra de Rosas project, which is across the street on Sebastopol Road, and then a parcel of land at the corner of Hearn and Dutton that the city of Santa Rosa was contemplating purchasing. At the time, the Tierra de Rosas project was stuck in the mud. They didn't have the funding. They didn't have the support. There was a pretty significant conflict over the future use of the building. It did not make sense to go forward. The Hearn campus presented itself, and the commission gave Ann Hammond direction to go ahead with that. And Director Thibault has inherited that. I will say that there are a lot of schools near this new location, near the Hearn location. It's one of the fastest growing residential areas in the county. It's a really good location for us. It is at the south end of Roseland instead of at the north end on Sebastopol Road, but it is really close to a lot of schools, and it's close to a lot of current and future residential growth. And it's going to have a lot more parking. So with that, are we going to take questions at the end? Okay, we're going to take questions at the end. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Craig Palmer. Chair Doyle, commissioners, Director Tebow, guests. My name is Craig Palmer. I'm the Fund Development Manager for the Sonoma County Library and Foundation. This afternoon, I'd like to share with you the status of the Sonoma County Library Foundation with regard to its fundraising on behalf of the Roseland Project, as well as how the foundation is preparing to continue fundraising after the Roseland Project. First, personally, I want to emphasize the foundation's ardent leadership commitment to the Roseland Library Project. This is a highly motivated board with every single member proudly owning a piece of the overall goal, led proactively by its extraordinary development committee chaired by Pat Kuda. There are several examples of board members chairing different sort of sub-campaigns, but now we have fundraising teams coming from the community. One example of that is Gail Greenup, whom many of you folks know. She co-hosted with Doug Bosco the reception that we had last year. She has come forward with her own campaign idea, help fill the Roseland Library shelves, or Readers for Roseland, as she's calling it. The primary goal, Gail's goal for her own fundraising, is to fund the bilingual materials for the collection by raising $250,000. Meanwhile, Gail treated to a tour by Erica and Jamie Anderson and came back and she said, how much does the whole collection cost? And Erica said, $750,000. And so Gail's comment was, well, great. If we do good getting to the 250, let's just go on and see how much more we can raise for the whole collection. Presently, the foundation has raised $4.6 million. $3.6 million has been raised from the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, specifically for construction. Just last week, Erica and Chris Valley, the foundation's president, right here with us this morning also, this afternoon, made a presentation to the entire tribal council to alert them to imminent next steps in the construction process. Going forward, we've also set up a system for regular check-ins with the council to keep them apprised of how the project is going. Last year, the foundation launched a $3.6 million 3-year campaign announcing a goal of $2.6 million needed for the collection, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and also announcing a goal of $1 million at the time, which at the time we sort of felt could be needed for construction. In its first year, ending just this past June 30th, the foundation has raised $1.2 million, beating the goal it set itself for the year. Already the foundation is hard at work. I'm very confident that it's going to raise another $1.2 million this year, and then they're going to wrap it up next year by raising one more $1.2 million. How has all this happened so quickly? Remember, 2 years ago, the foundation had only raised $75,000 in the entire year. The catalyst, of course, is first the urgency and worthiness of the cause itself. The chance to build this new library has captured the imagination of the donor community. The second reason is the foundation's ability to attract principal gifts. First, a gift of $250,000 from the Community Foundation of Sonoma County, and then an extraordinary $500,000 gift from the Peter E. Haas Jr. Family Fund. These are the kind of gifts that have a multiplier effect. They are validators that inspire other donors at all levels to join the campaign. These leadership gifts are motivated by the cause itself, as well as the trust those donors have in the foundation and the library that project will happen. I said multiplier effect. In the day in and day out fundraising efforts the foundation conducted last year, I take you back to its recent annual report that many of you just received. It took 3 pages to list every one of the 500 donors who gave between $1 and $3.5 million. That's a significant donor base, with a great many of them new. How do these donors think we're doing now? When we knew that the news of the shortfall in construction might become public, I did 2 things to check in with donors and their intent and how they were feeling about the project. First, I looked at the records of all those donors in the campaign who had the option within the context of the Roseland campaign to indicate where their donation should go. Overwhelmingly, everyone was picking where it's needed the most. Further, I then personally called all donors at the $5,000 level and above. Those to whom I could reach personally were perfectly fine with the initial use of funds being for construction. And one wonderful donor said, you know, I think I better give another gift too, don't you think? And I agreed with her, of course. And from those with whom I left voicemails, I heard not one negative response. Next slide. Fundraising for the future. From the very beginning, the foundation recognized that its 3-year campaign for Roseland would be its chance to build the foundation itself, its infrastructure, its policies and procedures, its prospect pipeline, its strategies, its materials. The idea is to build a foundation that by June 2026 could be depended upon to provide a reliable, steady stream of funding minimally at the annual level of $1 million or more that would be needed to augment the library's public sector sources. For example, the foundation was very granted to receive the library's facilities master plan, citing the need for extensive modernization of the library system going forward. Foundation funds will surely be needed there. To prepare now for life after Roseland, the foundation is embarking on its own strategic planning long-range process, a plan that will begin July 1, 2026 and look across the next 3 years. Leading this process is Sue Cochran, a recently recruited board member. Sue is a seasoned consultant working nationally in nonprofit strategic planning and board governance, who most recently was president of the AAUW Special Projects Fund. Next month, she will lead the foundation's first long-range planning session to anticipate this next horizon. A second session will follow in early spring, and that plan will be completed by June 30th, 2025. The process for strategic planning with the foundation began right where it should, with a meeting with Erica Thibault and the foundation leadership. Erica gave the foundation her view of long-range priorities which now propel that planning process going forward. The general concept that emerged from these first discussions focuses on those 6 priority areas of service initially identified in the case statement for Roseland. In other words, during those years 2026 through 2029, what will be needed throughout the system to optimize services in those areas, and how much will that modernization cost? The working title of that second campaign envisioned to follow the Roseland campaign is Building the Best Library System. The foundation needs to be ready to provide funding that will be needed just for that. A major revenue stream the foundation is eager to open this year is in the private and public foundation sectors. The foundation is commissioning a study from a knowledgeable foundation research professional, not to give us a one-dimensional list of program officers and phone numbers, but rather a deeper dive to let us know which are those foundations have a warmer interest in the library's long-term growth in those 6 priority areas that will be the focus of the strategic plan. With that research, the foundation will set cultivation and solicitation strategies and get to work opening up that stream as well. Presently, the board numbers 11 and takes pride in its diversity, younger and older, geographic representation, and diverse heritages all represented. There is more work to do here, and it is a priority for this year. The goal is to get to 15, not as a quantity exercise, but as a quality exercise. Recruiting to strengthen that diversity and mindful of its primary mission to raise funds that the library system needs. Next slide. The foundation has been propelled all along by the excitement of this project in the community, and a major turning point for the foundation and a place where the fundraising really did start to accelerate was when we learned that the Community Foundation Sonoma County was going to make us an award of $250,000. That money was very much appreciated and very much needed, but to this day, one of the rallying flags we always do with donors and events is this quote that Oscar gave us. It is our hope that the Roseland Regional Library will personify the essence of inclusivity and belonging, lifelong learning, and community that libraries create. And to this day, Oscar is one of the chief champions of this project with the foundation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you, Craig, for that, and Ray for that introduction. I am Myrna Lopez, the Chief Financial Officer And this afternoon, I am presenting the status of the fiscal year 25 fund balance available for budgeting. In other words, fund balance that's unrestricted. And I was asked to make this presentation in context of the decision for the new Roseland Library. For some background, I'm providing this chart that shows fund balance available for budgeting since the inception of Measure Y, or the collection of sales tax in 2017. This chart shows fiscal year 2017 through fiscal year 24, and these are actuals. However, fiscal year 24 is currently being audited. Fiscal year 25 is an estimate based on the proposed budget adjustments for purposes of this presentation. And fiscal year 26 is a forecast, assumes flat operating revenues, operating expenditures, meaning that there will be no increases into fiscal year 26. The chart, the blue bars are property tax and the green bars are sales tax. The line above is the combination of both. The combined balance reached its greatest amount at almost 25 million at the end of fiscal year 1920 on the onset of the pandemic and when public agencies were shuttered, including the library. In fiscal year 21-22, the fund balance decreased because of establishing committed funds or setting aside funds for our modernization capital projects. Then, and there was an increase in the following 2 years. The next slide looks at closer at fiscal year 24, 25, and 26. Fiscal year 24, as I said, unaudited actuals takes into account year-end figures and adjustments. These numbers are rounded. Property tax is at $14 million and sales tax fund balance is at $10.68 million for a total of $24.7 million. In fiscal year 25, property tax is $12.1 million. And sales tax is 8.8 million for a total of 20.96 rounded. The current fiscal year fund balance is less than prior year for the following reasons. If you recall, the stabilization fund increased, setting aside from 15% to 20%, which increased the committed fund balances. It also reflects budget adjustments that were presented to the Finance Committee on September 13, which includes revised decreased sales tax revenue and expenditures. The details of this budget adjustments will be presented to the Commission on October 9. Fiscal year 25 is a forecast to provide context for even the following year. These balances take into account the budget adjustments in fiscal year 25 and again, flat revenues and operating expenditures. None of these figures in this slide include committed funds for Central, Rincon Valley, or the new Roseland Regional Library, which we will consider in the following slides. So this may look familiar. This list of projects are those that were in the adopted budget fiscal year 25 for our planning for this fiscal year. And of the projects listed, the following have been approved to commence work. And these include Petaluma, Healdsburg, Cloverdale, Rohnert Park, and History and Genealogy. Other projects on the list are partially funded to begin the planning phase of those projects, and they include Rincon Valley and Central. Next slide. So drilling down into these projects, I do have updates for these projects and illustrate further impact on the fund balance available for budgeting. The purpose of this report is to inform the Commission of projects that have a funding gap or have been partially funded from the beginning. Per recent updates to the project list, Petaluma and Healdsburg project cost exceeding approved budget due to various delays and increased costs in materials. The combination of these two, the funding gap is $2.37 million for this fiscal year. The slide includes the remaining costs for Rincon Valley Modernization Project in the amount of $1.9 million. This one is slated to begin next fiscal year. And there is an update given Director Thibault's recommendation to reallocate $5 million from the central branch to the new Roseland Regional Branch. So that's what this chart also shows. So the total amount of unfunded balances for projects in the pipeline are $9.67 million. That's this number here. And then I also include Roseland in here. This is total allocation Roseland right here, as well as of $4.2 million for this fiscal year. Okay. So the next slide. Okay, as discussed earlier, the available fund balance for budgeting is $20.96 million. And in the previous slide, I shared the amount of unfunded balances for projects in the pipeline, which is $9.6 million. If the Commission approves the budget adjustments and fully funds these modernizations projects as listed in the previous slide, the remaining fund balance for budgeting is $10.38 million. So this is what you saw in the previous slides, estimated $20.9 million. This $4.2 million is the funding gap. So 20 million minus the funding gap leaves you with 16.6 million. If Roseland were to be funded at $5.4 million, and there would be a corresponding increase to the stabilization fund. If we increase our expenditures, we have to account for our stabilization fund. That's another 900,000, leaving an estimated fund balance available for budgeting of $10.38 million. I'd like to note that the total remaining fund balance is estimated at the end of fiscal year 24-25 is dependent on actual revenues, expenditures, and any budget adjustments through the year end closing June 30th, 2025.
All right, so now we're turning to the part where we discuss the JPA and the Measure Y expenditure plan. So this is a list of commission actions that have previously been taken, including support for the first temporary library that Ray spoke about, as well as an action that was taken in 2021 to approve renovation for the current temporary Roseland space, and in 2022 to the direction to focus on the Hearn Community Hub. So I brought with us copies of our JPA agreement. You have them on the table. There are highlighted sections. The first section I would like to highlight under the general powers, section 2B4. Sonoma County Library is authorized to acquire, construct, manage, maintain, and operate any buildings, works, or improvements. The second section is XC2, which is under the, let me see. It's under the part about facilities. So there's two sections here. One deals with improvements and repairs. That is section C2. The library and members who own facilities shall work together to plan for the provision and payment of capital improvements and capital repairs, including but not limited to major repair and replacement of building structures, HVAC systems, plumbing, etc. And then I also want to call your attention to 3A, which talks specifically about the central library building. This is the current JPA, but the previous JPA also references this. The library has previously paid the city of Santa Rosa approximately $1.3 million to allow it to retire its outstanding bonded indebtedness for which the city was liable on account of the central library building. So we have always assumed that the library does not pay for buildings. That is not true, and this section of the JPA clearly illustrates that. The next thing that I want to draw your attention to is our expenditure plan, our Measure Y expenditure plan. This is our current plan that ends in March of 2027. If you will look at the very end, where it's under improving access to local libraries, one of the few places left in the community that benefit everyone, and maintaining library collections, you will see that section 6 says specifically, keep the new Roseland Library from being closed. So both of these documents demonstrate that the library does have the authority not only to, fund building projects, but has a specific authority to fund the Roseland Library. There are two things that we know, and Myrna just was able to show that we have a fund balance, which is adequate, that if we do make this expenditure, we'll still have roughly $10 million left in the fund balance. The MOU with the city of Santa Rosa, which is not ready, so that's why I didn't bring it today, does not commit funds. It only describes the transfer of existing funds and what will happen if the library is unable to bridge that gap. And one of the things that I will be asking you at the October Commission meeting is to vote to approve that MOU. We really do need your direction. The city is voting on their contract with the design build entity, and they need a firm commitment from the library that we are going to be part of that project. They do not want to sign a contract with the design builder without clear commitments from the library that we are going to be part of this project. So we are going to be making that recommendation. Next slide. So these are some of the future actions we will be taking. The first one is the choice of a design build entity. Monday, we will be interviewing all 3 companies with the city of Santa Rosa. The selection will be made by the end of the week. The city will be voting on this contract in October. I will be asking for the commission's approval in advance of the city's meeting so that they can comfortably make that decision. And then we will probably be coming to you in December for a request for funding at the December meeting. There will be groundbreaking scheduled. We're not sure if it's going to be this year or next year, but there will be a vision ceremony that the city will be inviting everyone to. They will be debuting the selected winner, and the winner will be showing their architectural plans for the new location. If you've all checked your email, the city does have a public comment period. It ended yesterday. So, and I can share with you that they received over 250 comments about the designs, and they were all, I think the majority of the people who commented were from the Roseland community. And then, next year is really the design phase of the project, and then 2026 will be the construction, and then we hope to be opening our new library in March or April of 2027. And now we will take questions. I'm gonna come sit down though, because
Thanks very much for your presentation. I think we're going to ask for public comments first before the commission talks. Please step forward.
I've reserved the room through 3 o'clock, just in case it went over. And at some point, I'm thinking there will need to be a pause for people to put money in meters. At what time do we want to do that? It's almost 2 o'clock now.
I'm good to till 2:40. Anybody sooner than that?
All right, let's roll through it. Public comment.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland, and I do believe, having looked at everybody in the room, I'm perhaps the longest running advocate for Roseland, going on about 30 years at public meetings. You might think it's odd that I would come here and say to you, you need to do something different. But the reason why is because I was on the committees that first brought a library over to Roseland, at least from the community's standpoint, not the inside group that you folks work with. We had a Roseland Urban Vision in 2007. So when they did the agreements to do the Roseland Village Shopping Center destruction, we had asked for adaptive rehabilitation of those buildings. County decided to destroy them. Then when they went out and tried to find a developer, they went with MedPen. I was on the committees that chose MedPen. And at the time, one of the reasons they were chosen is specifically because they said they would be putting a library into that site. And at a recent Board of Supervisors meeting, it pointed out that Tierra de Rosas, as they call it now, has put into that agreement that there would be a 24,000 square foot civic building. So I'm really quite concerned that you folks here at this Library Commission for the entire county are basically you're being given a bait and switch. And what's happening is that they are trying to give you the bum's rush, we call it, from where I'm from, to get your money to do their project on Hearn Avenue, which is essentially for the fire department union to have a new fire station, which most folks in Roseland don't agree with. We would like to keep our fire station on Burbank Avenue, and there is a fire station down on Todd for the Bellevue area. So this is all about moving government money for different projects that are not necessarily serving the most deserving group of people, which are up in that Roseland census tract, which Mr. Hawley mentioned earlier. I've lived in both those census tracts that he described. It's very important to remember most of those young kids who are in the schools in Roseland are closer to the north end of Roseland. And so Sebastopol Road Commercial Corridor is a main spot for those library children who are under the ages of 12, let's say. The elementary schools, there's one on Burbank Avenue, but it's a closer walk up to Sebastopol Road than down to Hearn at Dutton. Now, I live closer to this new site, and one would think I would be saying, oh, this is great, let's get this. But no, I think you should save your money and not have the Santa Rosa approach where you have to fund something. In the past, they've funded things. Cities that have their library branches have typically taken care of that. This library should stay up on Sebastopol Road at the Roseland Village Shopping Center. I realize I'm the outlier on that, but I'm from Roseland and I'll always be standing up for Roseland.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any other public comment?
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Anna Diaz. I'm a trustee for the Roseland School District elect, and I am also a board member for the Roseland Advisory Board and serve many different hats in the community. But today, I'm just Anna Diaz from Roseland. So last commission meeting, I did, if you guys did not know, now you know, and if you guys forgot, now I'm reminding you that our middle school and high school do not have a library on their campuses. And this is established long before I was even a board member for the Roseland School District. And basically what Dwayne is saying is that this library is needed, and I understand that. However, I did understand when I was leaving after my last public comment for the last commission or 2 commission meetings ago, that there were some of you that were opposed of giving more money towards the library, which I do understand that there's other projects that are going on, Petaluma, Hillsburg, and I understand tremendously. However, Roseland has always been left to the corner. We have always been underserved, and it's about time that now Roseland is mentioned a lot more in county and city and other meetings that are throughout the county, that it's important that you guys understand that this is needed. This money, that some way, somehow that you guys could help and advocate for the Roseland community, it's important. And I understand that there's other issues going on, but as mentioned, Santa Rosa was just annexed, Roseland was just annexed to the city of Santa Rosa in 2017. That wasn't very long ago. So as a Roseland advocate for my community, for my people, and not only for my people, for my students, this is needed. This is desperately needed in our community. So I advise you that you guys look inside your hearts and you guys look at many of my students that are dependent off this library and all the bilingual services that are needed, along with their parents that want to learn English and that have been here in some way, somehow. It'd be nice to get the Mexican consulate to help them get their citizenship up in the path, but we can't do that unless you guys make the effort to also advocate for Roseland, just like myself, Dwayne, Councilmember Alvarez, and many of you guys are already doing in the sidelines. So I appreciate everyone that's here today. I'm not very well dressed, as you guys could see. I just came out of the gym, and when I was, thank you, Pam, for letting me know, Chair, that the meeting was going on today. But I made an effort to come today because this is important. Thank you, guys.
We appreciate it. Thanks very much. Any other public comments? Going once? Okay, sorry. Well, this is about this subject. That public comment for the meeting is one thing, public comment for this item is a different thing. Okay. Mr. Cahill.
Yeah, I want to, I had the opportunity to read draft MOU, the latest version. The current version of the MOU, and the figure of $5,400,000. That's not all up to us. $1 million, according to this, comes from the California State Library grant currently being held by the county. And the city, once the city shows that they've spent $1 million for pre-construction costs, then they will get the $1 million from the county through us. So we're really only on the hook for $4,400,000. And that is to be paid not all at once, but in 3 pieces. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And too many attachments here. 40% is to be paid upon the signing of a construction contract, I believe. And the other 2 pieces, the last one will be paid when the certificate of occupancy is accepted. So this is over a period of 3 fiscal years, we'll be paying the $4,400,000. It's less of a drain. Yes, it's committed funds. It'll go into the committed section of the budget, but it's not going to have to be dispersed all at once. So anyway, we're better off than I thought we were before I read the documentation.
Just that. So the 5.4 is just an estimate. The budget does include the 1 million, so it's not 4.4. It is a $5.4 million budget gap. I'm sorry, we won't know the actual estimate until the design bid contract is awarded. It could be, but all all signs point that it won't be. I can't share more than that.
A couple of things. I have concerns, some of which have been addressed, especially by Erica in a meeting with her, and some have not been addressed and that I still have. And then I have a new one that I didn't know I had as a concern. In looking at that fiscal report, there was something that went by really, really quickly. Oh yeah, and Director Thibault decided to just wipe out 5 million for Central, which is really, really needed for improvements. I don't know why, to make it look like we had more of a fund balance. It's in the plan to do Central and it's really needed. And Central is, I did a little geography thing, and I took the center of Roseland, which is like the food trucks, like in the middle of Sebastopol Road. And Central is 1.9 miles from that spot. The new library at the Hearn spot, which is not going to be a hub, it's going to be a fire station and a library. It's not in Roseland, it's Roseland adjacent. That's 1.2 miles from the center of Sebastopol Road. And does it matter? I don't know, but this library is used by the residents of Roseland right now and will be. And to just, not only for that, but to just all of a sudden just go, I'm going to wipe out $5 million here when that's in the plan. That is concerning to me. Maybe it's just to make it look like we have a bigger fund balance. Well, yeah, you could wipe out a lot of other things that we're going to do too. I'm really uncomfortable with that and just going, boom, gone. No more Central improvements.
So
after you do that, I want to mention a couple more concerns I have, okay?
So the Central project is not, we haven't decided to not move forward with it. It's that we are having discussions with the city about other possibilities for downtown Santa Rosa. So, we still have funding this fiscal year for design. We are working with an architect on that plan, but the question is, and this is something that we need to discuss, is investing, money in Central, is it worth it if we are considering other possibilities? From my perspective, the original plan for Central, when we looked at the facilities and master plan, was a $20 million project or a $15 million project. What we have outlined so far is a $5 million project, but that doesn't address some of the major structural issues. And for my part, I would rather build a new Central library than spend $15 million on trying to improve and renovate this library. It's something that we need to research further, that we need to, we need to talk to the city of Santa Rosa and just do some more background research before we make a decision about whether or not to move forward with the Central renovation.
Okay. But that's worth a lot of explanation, a lot of talking, not just, okay, so it just looks like boom, it's all right. So it sounds like right now, what we're trying to figure out is, do we give 5 point whatever million dollars to be part of construction of a 15,000 square foot library? And if we don't, it's going to be a 10,000 square foot library. It's not that it's not going to happen, just so for the record. And so I looked at the sizes of other libraries just to get an idea, of what 10,000 would be like, and other libraries that were like Guerneville, that was constructed to be a library, not a library like Sebastopol, that's just a building that people kind of moved into. It's worth noting, even if it's 10,000 square feet, it's going to be bigger than Cloverdale, bigger than Guerneville, bigger than Northwest. Well, about the same size as Sonoma Valley. So I think Sonoma Valley is, of all of them, a good example of what it might be like, because it's a specially constructed building to be a library. Just
like, just to put it out there. Another thing that is just on my mind and is concerning to me is in reading the JPA, where you were reading that, yeah, we're not really violating the JPA if we go in for construction of a building. There's other things that, I mean, it could change, but it's making me uncomfortable in reading. And I'm the last one to really go, oh, we have to stick by every little teeny rule, but I think we kind of do. In our bylaws, it says, as required by the amended and restated JPA agreement, the library shall, and wait, I'm not reading the right part. Wait a minute. Sorry. Sorry. Can you tell us what part of the bylaws you're reading when you find it? Page 9. I just pulled it out of my binder to bring, but somewhere it says that what?
Section G. So.
Yeah, it is in there, but there's a place, now I got to find it, where it says here, members, which is cities and counties, members to provide facilities which are both habitable and appropriate for use as public libraries as no cost to the library. In return, the library should be required to do general maintenance, repairs, upkeep, blah, blah. I don't know. It sounds like the members are supposed to provide a building, not that we build it with them. Does it matter? I don't know. And as an adjunct to that, I feel like as a commission, we're the fiscal oversight, right? And I worry, like, we go into building a building on a site that already has 5 million more here and this and that. Like, what are we really in for? What is it really going to cost? There was something in the MOU about all change orders. The library has to pay for all change orders. Well, I can understand that if the library asks for change orders, if it's internal to the building and we want more something, shelves, I don't know, windows. But change orders that the city decides to do because, well, they got to dig deeper to make something, or are we responsible for all this construction stuff? That is there a real estate attorney involved here? I just don't know what we're all going to be in for. It seems like a new type of project. It's not the same as remodeling. And I want to feel as a commissioner confident that we're not in for some big problems down the road with a partner, the city, that is, I don't know, they're really struggling for money, I guess, or they wouldn't be asking us to put it at 5 to build this building. I'm uncomfortable with some of this stuff. Another thing, so I'm just throwing all my stuff out there and you can respond. It was brought up at our last commission meeting that there's a no cause termination in the MOU. I'm concerned about that. If the city just says one day, whoops, we made a big goof, we can't afford to do, or I don't know, it's all got to go to the fire department or this or that. What does that mean? Is that something we need to change? There's so much here that I don't think it's helpful by staff or anybody to just barrel on through and try to convince all of us that there's no problems and this is going to work and everything's fine. And that's our goal, is to convince the commission just to do it. I think it's more helpful to look into potential problems, to deal with them now, if they might happen, either in changing contractual or MOU things, or just not to push things, but to, and I understand there's a time limit, that I understand, but to really delve into potential problems and issues.
So first of all, the bylaws are created by the Library Commission. The JPA was negotiated by all the members. There's nothing in the JPA that says any member has to provide a library building. In fact, Cotati does not have a library building, and they are a member of the JPA. The JPA is clear that all they have to do is be a signatory. So having a library building is not a requirement. We also do pay. We have leases in place at Occidental and at Forestville. So it is not true that we have not paid. And as I pointed out, the JPA also refers to the Central Library building, for which we paid the city of Santa Rosa for 1.3. The termination clause is something that we are working on, which is why I don't have an updated version of the MOU, because we're still that hasn't been finalized with the city. So that will be coming to you to the October commission meeting. That language for cause or without cause is going to be addressed in the new version of the MOU. My particular perspective is that for some commissioners, it is a comfortable yes for them to vote to allocate funding. For some, it is a comfortable no. And then there are the folks who it will be an uncomfortable no or an uncomfortable yes. The Library Commission does not have to be unanimous. There is, no judgment on whatever decision you make. It is your prerogative to vote however you choose. I think that, we do have time before we have to allocate funding. I said December, but it doesn't have to be December. The issue is really that we need to make a decision, yes or no, before they really get deep into the design process. And I can tell you now that, even if we decide, yes, we're going to provide funding for this project, we will have a change order. And that is just, that because we are asking the architect to change the designs that they have already presented. We did that with Healdsburg, and I believe it was an additional 200,000 that we had to pay. First date here. Yeah. Yeah, so and when it comes to the change orders, we are not required to approve them. We can say no, and I'm gonna turn this to Brian Anastasio if he's still on the line to talk about change orders. Brian, are you there? Okay. I can hear you. We can't hear you. There you go.
How's that? Okay. It keeps on going back and forth. Well, yeah, thank you for allowing me to join your the meeting, the special meeting. And I do appreciate your concern and with the risks that that you're concerned with construction. I've been in the construction field for over 30 years now, and there's risk in all construction projects, but the delivery method that we used is a design build method, which minimizes the risk of the owner and puts the majority of the liability onto the contractor. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the design build process, but that's really how it's posed. Where we provide a program and working with the library folks in the fire department. I mean, we've had months, if not years, over years of planning this project, which I think we did a great job and put out a great RFP out there. And just to prove that, we had a great response from the construction market. I mean, we had and the RFQ, or the request for qualification stage, we had 10 entities that were very interested in the project and submitted qualifications, in which we downlisted those to 3 entities. So just the construction market is really excited about this project, and and it's just an installment, just a proof that that you're going to get a great project with this, with the involvement with the quality contractors that are involved with this project. As far as change orders are concerned, yeah, I mean, the library group will be involved in any change orders. if not all, and then obviously a little bit more when they deal with change orders. Obviously, there's different types of change orders, change order requests. You know, as far as, you know, improvements of a library, of course, any requested items, scope, or any so forth. There is always a chance of unforeseen conditions, but I think we did a great job with a lot of majorities is type, you know, soil type conditions or something that's unforeseen for that, you know, that's just unknown at the time. There's always a chance for that, but I think you know, the design team and the criteria architect, as well as you know, the city, did a great job in doing their due diligence to avoid those type of situations that could occur.
Erica, if I could add one thing, the provision in the draft MOU, which is still draft, concerning change orders, I'm pretty comfortable. The library is only going to be responsible for library-related change orders. So it's not, the library isn't agreeing in advance to pay for change orders that are not related to the library portion of the project.
Thank you.
Just a note, the language of the JPA will supersede the language of the bylaws, because the bylaws are commission bylaws. So whatever the JPA says is really what was.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to add, I did want to add on that one as well. That is correct. The JPA is what controls. The bylaws are an expression of the commission's interpretation of them. But frankly, when we're dealing with library members and negotiating leases and other agreements, they are not bound by the bylaws. They are bound by the joint powers agreement.
Yes, I have obviously a whole lot of questions. I'll start with the kind of the gist of this whole meeting so far has been advocacy for Roseland. And I will say again, as I said, every meeting, I'm an advocate for Roseland. I think we're all advocates for Roseland. No one doubts the need. No one doubts, you know, we want to do this. We have always wanted to do this. It's a question of, with the hat that we're wearing, which is the fiduciary agents, shall we say, of the joint powers agreement, and how we see it and how we spend the money. And when I submitted my questions, some of them were answered about what our unassigned fund balances are. But I didn't get an answer to how they were accumulated, even though I think it would be helpful for other members of the commission to know how they were accumulated. And again, the likelihood that they'll ever be accumulated again, that we'll ever have a big chunk of money, $20 million, minus. Again, we are putting aside money, I'm sure, into our capital projects, but in order to have this money, this precious amount of money that a lot of the jurisdictions think we have to be able to fund things, it's limited, and it's not going to be built up again. And I'll defer to our CFO in just 1 second, as soon as I finish trying to get my point out. So it's important for us as commissioners to know how much we have, how it was accumulated, and whether we'll have this kind of money again. I will say that at the Finance Committee meeting last Friday, just a week ago, I was quite shocked that 2 fully funded projects, we're using the term fully funded, both Healdsburg and Petaluma were fully funded, but they're not, because we found out last Friday that Petaluma needs, you can see it on the report there, Petaluma needs another 1.4 million, and Healdsburg needs just this side of another million. So that's 2.4 we didn't know about. I understand how it happens. I'm not mad at anybody or anything, but it's these kind of unexpected costs that pop up. And as Eve said, you know, what are we getting into? And I think we've heard a lot of this. It's mostly advocacy. And again, we're all advocates, but it's the role that we play as commissioners and our responsibility to the entire group of members of the joint powers agreement. We can slide by, maybe we can find openings, maybe we find ways around it or ways to do things, but what's the right thing to do? That's what I ask myself. And I just have too many questions about this, too much that we haven't known about. Soil conditions. I mean, there's stuff that you know, if I was along with the board with this project the whole time, even though I have had questions, I would have done something different, blah, blah, blah. The whole time until the $10 million that Santa Rosa allocated in PG&E funds suddenly went, oh, it's only going to be $5 million and 5 of them we're going to put in the infrastructure. So that's what threw me, because all of a sudden we are responsible for helping to build a building. And I agree with Erica, way back when there was the funding of this building, there was a much closer relationship between the city and the county. And there was this document that we found in the, you know, the dusty archives that all happened. But certainly since the new and amended Joint Powers Agreement in 2014, we have never funded any buildings. That hasn't been part of our scope of responsibility. Yes, this is a special situation, but to me, there's just so many unknowns and things that I don't know about. I hope to hear some of these questions from other commissioners, and then I'll yield my time. But I would like to ask our CFO if she would address the accumulation, how these funds were accumulated, and the likelihood that they will be accumulated again.
Thank you for that question. The fund balance is an accumulation of surpluses, essentially. And what is a surplus? A surplus is when revenues are greater than the actual expenditure. So actual revenues have come in higher than the actual expenditures. So then that difference is reverted to the fund balance. And over the years, prior to, I've been here 3 years now, or it'll be 3 years in November. But prior to that, I think the CFOs at that time either had a difficult time in projecting what the sales tax revenues was going to be, and also property tax. So expenditure, they were underestimating revenues. And then if there were a savings in expenditures, then that surplus went into the fund balance. Then came the pandemic, where the library shuttered and reduced hours, et cetera, and therefore cut down in expenditures. Capital projects were stopped. And so therefore all of those expenditures that were planned did not happen. Yet, as you know, the irony of things was that people were still buying, and sales tax was coming in at higher rates than anticipated, and property tax as well. So there was so much turnover in the real estate market, prices were going up really high, therefore reassessment of property taxes, sales tax, people got, the pandemic, funds, extra funds. So people had money to spend, and the library benefited from that, and our surpluses increased. Therefore, the library has had opportunities to do some prudent policies. One, which was to set aside funds for the modernization projects. And that's where you start to see the decline of available fund balances. And then in addition, this fiscal year, the Library Commission approved increasing the stabilization fund, which is really your rainy day fund. So you see another decrease there. So that's how the fund balance has been accumulated. I don't have a crystal ball, but essentially at this time, with the changes in with the high interest rates up until recently, the Fed's cut the interest rates. It is not clear how the economy is going to respond to that. But as of my projections that were presented today before any cuts, sales tax revenue in particular is forecasted to remain pretty flat.
Right. And if I could just, pointing on to what you just said, the fact that you're doing this great budgeting now, and basically we're on a balanced budget. We are basically spending what we come in. We're not having a lot of surprises, even though we had a little shortfall last year. So that would make it unlikely that we would build up another surplus like this because we're doing such a good job of budgeting now. And I'd also throw in back, and since I was back in this time, when we first started collecting the sales tax, we hadn't had a chance to build out our capacity. We were collecting sales tax before we could actually spend it because we were closed. We had to hire more staff and build whatever. So there was a lot of accumulation there at the very beginning of Measure Y funding. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Well, I'm not going to repeat all the questions I've submitted already, and I think I've already made my point about them being submitted so that the public has an opportunity. But it seems to me with the JPA, what we're talking about, it's not that we don't have the authority to go and fund a new building. You know, we have. It's in the JPA gives that. It gives us authority to do a lot of things. But this commission has not, in its history, put together an infrastructure plan that says, here's what we're going to do about improvements, building improvements. Here's what we're going to do about FF&E. Here's what we're going to do about site purchases. And here's what we're going to do about construction. That's never been done. This is now all of a sudden out of, as Barbara said, Commissioner McKenzie said earlier, out of the blue. We're suddenly now being asked, oh, give some money, get involved in library construction. I don't think the commission could do that. I mean, you can if we got together and said, here's an infrastructure plan, here's a policy, Erica go and carry it out. That hasn't been done. The other thing that's possible that I think are all funding possibilities that again have passed is this could have been put in the budget. We just had our budget review process where the budget was put together. If we knew we were going to be needing to invest money in construction, it could have been brought up then, wasn't it? The Measure W that's out could have included funds for construction of buildings. It could have had in their expenditure plan a proposal for building construction. It doesn't. The fundraising that the foundation did was for FF&E, very clearly FF&E. And if there's been money now that's been said to basically we'll put it in an unallocated fund and make it available for maybe spending money, that's great. But have the people that have been donating money when they've been solicited money told that money was going to go into construction. No, they said it was going to go to FF&E. And as I understand it, budgeting, this is the question that I'd like to have Myrna address, is that those things are classified differently. FF&E money, it's not money for building and construction. You know, FF&E money, as I understand it, is treated separately. Money for site purchase and construction is treated separately. Money for improvements is treated separately. So the fact that we're doing an improvement plan for some of our branches, I don't think that, you know, I mean, it mixes apples and oranges up. You know, they're all different ways of funding something, and they're all practices, you know, traditional practices. That's where I feel that Barbara's point is important. I think, and as a commission, we have to set the policy and then you carry them out as director. There's not a policy for this. We haven't developed an infrastructure policy. All of us like Roseland, want to have a Roseland library, have wanted to have a Roseland library for a long time, but we've never planned it. And now we're told Central's going to be lopped off, something that's been in the making for a while, for something that we haven't even talked about as something we're going to spend money on until just recently. You know, It's not a matter that the authority's not there. I think the problem is that we haven't made the strategic commitment that that's what the commission wants to have done. And it's not up to you and your staff to tell us, well, this is what we're going to do. To hell with whatever it is might be a policy. We think we're going to do it. No, I mean, it's the commission that's supposed to set the policy, and you carry those policies out.
So let me address your first question about the foundation. So the original fundraising plan did not specify that the money was for FF&E. The original fundraising plan was for the project. When the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria donated the $3.5 million, it was with their understanding that that was going to complete the construction part. So it is not true that we have only ever been raising money for FF&E. FF&E also includes finishes, which is construction. All of our projects include construction. It is just interior work that we are doing. So even our FF&E is going to include finishes, and finishes can include flooring. It can include, any number of things. All of our projects have construction. In fact, when we do our budgets, I think, Dave, you figure like it's a third construction, a third, yeah. So when we do our projects, it's a third construction, a third design, and a third FF&E. So, we use this term FF&E, but it actually encompasses more than that. It is not just furniture and books. It includes installation. It includes all of that work that goes into it. Right.
Director Tebow, I would underscore all that with one thing. I'll give you a little bit of background. When the foundation was getting ready to launch this campaign in November of 2022, in our preliminary materials, we had set a budget of $3.5 million for construction. And then late one night, we got a phone call, and suddenly we learned that the Great Indians were going to give us $3.5 million for construction. So our concern was we had a goal of $3.5 million we were talking about, and we knew that FF&E was going to be $2.6 million. So in the very first materials that we created and used in that launch, there was a goal of also $1 million for construction. And the reason simply was, if we're going to do 2.6 for FF&E and we've announced a goal of 3.5, let's have the rest of it be for construction in that way that if it's needed in a construction project, which often it usually is.
And in terms of the budget, so we did not get a budget from the city of Santa Rosa until December of 2023. That was the very first budget that we received, and it showed a $5.4 million budget gap for the project. At that time, we did not know, where, if that was for the whole entire project, if it was for the library. The second the second budget that we received from them was in March of 2024. So, I don't know how, and even now, we still don't know what the actual budget deficit is, because we won't know that until we pick a design build entity, and they will have a more accurate budget. So, I don't know how we could have included it in the budget workshop, because it's still a moving target.
Ray's got his hand up. I think he wants to clarify something.
We could have put a category in there for capital improvements, not for capital improvements, but for site purchases and construction as part of an infrastructure plan. But the little commission's never done that. And we don't have that now. And so to say now on the fly, we're going to create some money that's going to move other monies around, we wouldn't have any kind of a plan for that. But, we haven't developed a plan. We barely just started to get a discussion about a plan for the order in which to do the refreshes and the modernization work. So it would be nice if we had a policy in place, which we could do, but we don't. And that's the thing about this. It's all getting everything, I think, confused. And taking up a lot of time is we're not getting the data. I feel we're not getting the data that we need. And we don't have a policy to provide any guideline for the public or for the other jurisdictions about what they would do if they want to get a new bid.
Ray, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Doyle and Commissioners. Just a couple comments regarding the information about the budget shortfall. I want to add to Director Tebow's comments that the budget that we received in December and the follow-up in March, those were provided to us confidentially. And it was a little early to share that in any other way. Two other quick points I want to make regarding Central. I was the library's representative on the downtown specific plan for City of Santa Rosa a few years ago. This piece of property is listed on that as a catalyst site. Okay, the potential is to ask the library to leave and then to build a high rise here, presumably for housing. That plan stalled and it suddenly has momentum again. That parking lot across the street and the other parking garage a block and a half away are in contract. They're being sold for housing. And so the momentum is building to build more housing. And when I found out about that, I let the director know that, you know, I'm concerned about us, personally concerned about us moving forward with an investment in Central because we need to sit and wait and watch this play out a little bit. And then my last point is, as Commissioner McKenzie pointed out, the 3.7 million that the library has allocated to Petaluma is pretty soon going to become $5 million. Under the intention of the Measure Y and the JPA, we wanted to remodel that library. Okay, we didn't have to. The library is functional. We could have left that orange carpet from the 70s there, but we all eagerly supported moving forward as a way to maximize the use of that library for the next couple of generations. Santa Rosa, through its own acquisition of funds from PG&E and ARPA and our support, getting money from the state, has enough money to build a 10,000 square foot library. And they're willing to build that. Okay, our opportunity is to do what we're doing in Petaluma and maximize the ability and the utility of that library for the next couple of generations by right-sizing it with an investment very similar to the one we're making in Petaluma and Healdsburg. Thank you.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes. What's the bidding process stand now? My understanding is, I could be mistaken.
Speaker.
Sorry. Talk about the bid process. My understanding is, and maybe I have been misinformed, that we have the bids that have been submitted in hand. I want to know where they are and when we can see them. I had expected them at this meeting. Bids. The bids are in. I think we've got them. I'd like to see them because those are really, that's what matters. I mean, it could be that two of them are completely out the window, you know, but I want to know where the bids are.
Well, you know, Friday is the deadline. Friday, the 27th of September is the deadline for the selection process. Ray and Dave and I will be in all-day interviews on Monday with all the 3 design-build entities, asking them questions about their proposals. You know, we will know very soon, you know, who the design builder is and what their projected costs are, and we can share that with you when we have it. But right now it's confidential, and we can't share any details in public meeting because of the confidentiality process.
A follow-up question. I suggested a week ago that we use a closed session. We would have 2 meetings today, one a closed session on the bids and this one. What happened to the closed session meeting?
We only had an hour. We also, with the deadline for the selection process a week away, I don't see the benefit of going over the 3 bids when we're going to have an awarded contractor within a week or 2. So to me, it doesn't make sense to go through that and have all those discussions when we're only one party, that the library is only one party in the selection process. The city, has a whole crew of folks who are also making their comments. And it just doesn't make sense to me to have that discussion because we're so close to getting an award.
Which individual human beings will make the decision as to which bids are going to be accepted?
Well, the city is ultimately going to make the decision. The library does have, I am, the representative from the library on the selection committee. I will, and then Dave and Ray and I are all working together to submit our comments, but ultimately it will be the city's choice. And it may not be my choice, but it will be their choice.
Commissioner Lagos.
Yeah.
If I could make one comment, and I'm not specifically familiar with how Santa Rosa is running this process, but the nature of design build, it's not like a bidding project. Like the city is not bound to award to the low bidder. It is a competition process. And so it is not surprising that right now the information is not publicly available. And ultimately, the city will make a decision based on a number of factors. Price will presumably be one of them, but will not be the only consideration. And then much as I appreciate the thought of having a closed session, there's not really a basis for the Library Commission to be in closed session to talk about this. So unfortunately, I don't think we could have done that.
Thanks, Jeff.
So I think by Erica's previous categorization, I'm a comfortable yes. And I think you all know that about where I stand on the Roseland project. But in listening to some of your comments, one of the perspectives that I wanted to share was, I do think we have a once in a generation, our generation especially, surplus of funds. And we have a once in a generation opportunity to make an investment in a community that has been historically underserved and disadvantaged. And so I look at that opportunity, and from everything that we have heard today, we recognize that it's not perfect. It's not exactly the way we wish it to be, but of course, nothing is going to be that way. There maybe isn't a policy or a plan that we would love to be able to point to and say, oh, this gives us the rationale and the agreement to do it. But that's a lovely thing, but nobody really kind of saw this one coming. So these surplus funds are here. This opportunity is in front of us. I hate the idea that we would be walking away from it because of some uncertainty about whether or not it perfectly fits into what we think we should or shouldn't be doing. I hear many of you talk about how you're advocates for Roseland, and I appreciate that. And what I'm going to say maybe is you're going to find insulting, but you're not advocates if you're not actually voting yes. Because the opportunity to do something is when you're an advocate. An advocate isn't the keyboard warrior who says, yes, I voted yes on this reimagining plan, or yes, I support this document that we're looking at. An advocate is someone who actually does something when they're presented with the opportunity. And that's what we have today, is we have an opportunity to actually advocate for Roseland and to show up when the community has asked us to do that. And so I actually think that this is our biggest opportunity to be an advocate for Roseland. We have a chance to actually say, we're going to do better than anybody else is going to do. We're going to come back to the commitment that we made in 2015. We're going to build a $15,000 square foot building. And we're going to recognize that we make these investments in all the different parts of our community. I have never seen a plan, to be honest with you, Fred, for how or why we're going to be putting in $5 million for Petaluma or $3 million for Healdsburg. But I don't stop the project. I see the value in it. I recognize we have a chance to improve a facility, and I want to move forward with it because we have the funds available. And so that's the same feeling that I have for Roseland. We have a chance to actually be the governing body of a system that says we don't just look at opportunities and then say, oh, this one feels uncomfortable, I don't think I'm going to do it. But we actually have an opportunity to do something for Roseland and to make an impact. And so
I feel like Myrna has done an incredible job of explaining our finances. We've had an excellent presentation regarding the legality of what we're about to do. And now it really comes down to the moral guidepost that we're going to use. Are we going to be a library that is an advocate for a community that's asking us for help, or are we not? And that to me is where I'm a very comfortable yes.
I agree and think that we have talked about Roseland for a very long time, longer than Santa Rosa has been involved, and have been committed to it for a long time. So I think that this is the time to do that. I also think this is an opportunity. We have facilities master plan. We have worked on facilities master plans for a number of years. And so this is a segue then to do a larger plan, to do a more specific plan about what the various branches need. So I think that because we don't have the broader picture written down in stone is no reason to not move forward with Roseland. And I think it will then give us a lot of experience as we're developing that plan. And I do think that if you've got a surplus, you don't want it to sort of disappear into a little project here, a little project there, a little project there. You want to make a statement. You absolutely want to make a statement. And I think Roseland is a way to do that. Who haven't we heard from? Brooke, you haven't.
I've been thinking about relative square feet of the different libraries, and I live in an isolated small town with a population of about 9,000, and our library is tiny. Roseland will be at 15,000 square feet, about 2 Cloverdales, not gigantic. I feel like if we were to reduce the size, we're putting our money into something that isn't future oriented, that would not be adequate for this population density. So it almost makes no sense not to do at least 15,000 square feet. And I agree with Sarah, the money's in hand, and sometimes where our personal budget, we might hold, come from a place of scarcity. When we're in a position to benefit so many people now, my philosophy is let's do this now and give them the 15,000 square feet, which is not, by the way, a gigantic library. So those are my thoughts.
Paul, you haven't said anything.
For a while. I had my hand up for a while, but.
And now you're speaking.
Now I'm speaking. So thank you for recognizing me. Okay, I think I brought this up before, but so we're committed, let's just say $5 million to go for the 15,000 square feet. And we have that, it seems, in our budget. What's to prevent a backfill, like the foundation would make a $5 million pledge to backfill that? Is that something we could get back into our budget if that happened, or half of it, or maybe Grayton would backfill that? Is that something we can do legally if we commit it out of our budget, but come up with some money to replace that in the future?
I'm not sure we should speculate about that in a public meeting.
Well, but I can say that we are still continuing to try to fund this project. We met last week with Grayton Rancheria. We are still, working with the county. We will leave no stone unturned. I mean, we are still trying to bridge this gap. So, I'm not going to, I can't speak for the foundation. Personally, I wouldn't recommend that approach. I think the better approach would be to find, other sources of funding, and try to do it that way. I mean, that's what I would recommend.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you for answering it.
Well, I don't know that this should be the last comment. I mean, we haven't had much opportunity to have this discussion. We've had shorter discussions at a couple of commission meetings where it's like we're crashing toward this, ultimate question, and it's a big one. We haven't built buildings. We haven't put money and given money to a jurisdiction, say, we're going to help build you a building. We haven't done that. This is a big decision, whether it's right or wrong, how we feel about it. It's a big decision and it's worthy of a full discussion. I'll take the bait on the advocacy thing. I mean, my husband and I have put in $10,000 toward this campaign, which was personally a very large gift for us. I believe I have been advocate for this. I don't think I've ever said anything negative about it. The only negative things I ever say about this thing is that I don't feel comfortable we represent all the members of the joint powers. We have to take care of all the members of the joint powers. We have to look out for all the members of the joint powers and their projects that may be coming along. If we do this, as Eve said, there goes Central, and then Central's complicated, you know. Okay, but hello, this is my opportunity to talk, right?
Deborah, there was a presentation for 45 minutes before we were allowed to have a discussion. And you said at the last commission meeting, you were hoping we'd never have this meeting. That came out of your mouth. It's okay to talk about this. It doesn't have to wrap up really quick. This is an opportunity. Like, if you got to go somewhere, go, but let people talk.
I'm clear about that. We don't need to say the same things over and over.
Maybe we do. Maybe we do.
Okay, keep going.
So the essential thing is, what role are we playing? As the Library Commission, we represent all of the jurisdictions, all of them. If we spend this money, we take Central off the list, then there's $10 million left. I'm not convinced that the 5.4 is even a fixed number. It doesn't sound like it's even a fixed number. I mean, maybe we could commit to a fixed number. If at least I would feel better about that. I don't feel committed to like this, and then we don't really know. And then, you know, more bills come in and we have limited funds. I mean, we know that now. We're down to $10 million, and that's for everybody else. That's for all the other jurisdictions. That's also assuming that we're just going to spend all this money on facilities. I mean, we might want to pre-fund, you know, a trust as for CalPERS, as we've talked about at the Finance Committee, put some more money into our OPEB. We have big unfunded liabilities. And so it's just, I don't feel have a chance to fully flesh out all of our needs, all of our considerations, be cautious, be careful, be prudent. Prudent people responsible for this really big decision about limited funds that we have, as well as taking a new direction, as well as setting a precedent to give a city a big chunk of money to build a building. We've never done that before. And, you know, if we're prepared, and we can't be prepared. I mean, we're already finding out how limited our funds are. Surprise costs come in, not going to build up a big pot of money again. And so, you know, it's wonderful that I loved the foundation report. That was terrific. That's all. We never know, right? We don't know how much the foundation will be raised. We hope that, you know, they're really setting a very good precedent and program, and that we'll be able to raise a lot of money. But all we know for sure is what we have now. That's all we know for sure. And I don't feel comfortable. I'm one of the uncomfortable people. I don't feel comfortable committing a kind of loose amount to partially building a building for one jurisdiction.
So let me just address some things. So I looked at our facilities master plan. All of our libraries have been renovated, except for Rincon Valley, which is scheduled for next year, Central Library, and Windsor. Windsor has a mini renovation for this year. Rincon Valley is going to be done next year. So, you know, all of the libraries are, you know, all the other jurisdictions have been renovated in the past 15 years with those exceptions.
It's the oldest one. Every time I bring up Rohnert Park, everybody freaks out, and I'm only representing Rohnert Park. I'm not, but it is the newest, and yet it's 21 years old, and yet it's relying on an infrastructure grant, and it has to pay a big chunk of money in terms
And
of
we're
the
also
shared cost.
contributing to that. We're also giving them $450,000 towards that project.
Right, but they're also expected to put up a like amount, which is not necessarily what we're doing with the other jurisdictions. This is just one of many things, again, that needs a full-fledged discussion. And so, you know, we're getting at a lot of this, but it's just, to me, it's just this pressure of the timing of making this fundamental decision. And without fully having all the information and having thought through really this process. And I'm feeling like right now we're really rushed. We've got to get out of here. And this is exactly the time that we should be taking to listen to each other and say, can we help? What's going to take for you to feel better about this? Or what's it going to take? Or how, that kind of stuff. And I don't feel like that's what this meeting, I don't feel like it's happened.
Commissioner Engler.
Is that everything that this library's put out about buildings historically has always been the members pay, the city, the county, whoever is recognizes the member in the JPA is responsible for the creating and developing the building. At one point, that even included FF&E back in time somewhere, and it got changed, and I've yet to find where that changed. But at one point, it also included maintenance. So that's, but the standing policy of the library has always been that the members pay for the building, the library pays for the interior, the non-permanent things that need to be done in the building. There's not anything out in any of our publicity that says otherwise. So I don't even know, I'm confused about how this idea ever even came up in the first place. I mean, if it was presented, why didn't somebody from the library representing us say the library can't, that's not something that we do. But maybe that wasn't said. Maybe the city of Santa Rosa decided that, well, here's something we're going to do and let's get it done. But it seems to me that staff should have been in a position to say to them, that's not something that the library does. We don't fund the buildings. If you need money for the building, that's something you should build. You should take care of. And in their MOU, it says that they acknowledge the fact that the library, given the library's position of the grant money that they've gotten because of this and everything else, has been more than a larger investment in the building than theirs. I mean, it seems that they're getting money from their taxpayers. They're getting money. They have the same fiduciary duties to their taxpayers as we do to the people that are supporting the library countywide. And I say that, if this practice has always been you pay for the thing, then where's the city of Santa Rosa saying they're going to put up the money for the building? If they got a building for 10,000 square feet, they have the money to do it. That's great. It doesn't stop there being another library branch somewhere. And then to hear today that we might be having to have the same discussion unless we do something after today on developing an infrastructure plan about where we're going to put Central. That they're already talking about what they're going to do from Central. So it seems to me we should already be talking about what are we going to do when Central's moved, when it's turned into a building for housing, which is needed. But that's something we haven't done. The library's never done. And to suddenly be presented with this and ask us to make a decision without having any background on any of that, and without really talking, for example, talking about equity and, how we're going to provide resource equity throughout the system.
Commissioner Lagos, one last comment, and then Erica, you want to wrap it up?
Well, I was just going to say, the approach that the library has taken about the city, the JPA partners provide the building and the library only provide. This is a scarcity model way of thinking. And we no longer exist with a scarcity budget. I think that is a way, when I talk to other library directors that are JPA partners, especially San Mateo County, I have this question. I talk to them all the time about their building projects. And I can tell you that San Mateo is putting more into their buildings than the cities are because they have the ability to do so. And the other JPAs do so as well. I do want to clarify, the city never asked us to put money in. The city, so that did not come from the city. That came from the library staff. When we looked at what they were able to provide us with the funding that they had, it's a 10,000 square foot library. We do not believe that that is adequate for the needs for the Roseland community. So that is where that came from. The city has never asked us for money. The city is fully prepared, and the MOU is very clear what will happen if we don't get the additional funding, that we will negotiate an agreeable square footage based upon the money that we actually have in our hands.
Sarah,
Yeah, I want to talk about next steps.
you want to talk about what? Could you put your,
Date and time of the next meeting. I suggest that we're going to be confronted with an MOU, understand, on October 9th, that shortly thereafter, we ought to call another special meeting on this project. I'm not happy with not having the bids here today, but at some point, we're going to look at the thing, probably after October 9th, maybe substantially after that. The city will pick something. We need to be able to look at it and say, is this what we want to do? And Erica says we're not going to vote on committing the funds until December, maybe later. The key drop dead deadline is when some of these existing other grants lapse if they haven't been formally accepted. I think maybe that's January. This is not the end of the process. It's not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning.
I also was going to ask one of the questions that David did, which is what else is needed? I do feel like we've had the same questions, and Barbara, I've heard your same concerns, and Fred, I've heard yours. And I do feel that the library staff have addressed them. It is not a perfect project. It is in flux, and it will be, because that's just the nature of this. The opportunity is in front of us. We can either choose to move forward with it or not. And so I think where I'm coming from is, I don't know that more discussion is going to change anyone's mind. I really don't. I think we all came in here pretty certain how we feel about this, and no one's going to say anything that's going to magically change anyone's mind. I don't think Erica's going to be able to pull something out of a, dusty JPA document that says, oh, here we go, here's the answer, and it's going to make everyone feel better. So knowing that, and knowing where everyone might be in their comfortable or uncomfortable yeses and nos, I really question, will any more conversation actually move anyone off where they're currently at? My guess is no. So I think it comes back to that same question that we have to ask ourselves. With the opportunity in front of us to make an investment in a community that has been underserved, that the library has promised to support, are we willing to do that? Because at the core, that's the only question that matters. That makes no sense. I'm so sorry, but that makes no sense. If it is, it is. You are the person who's responsible for how it's going to get spent.
Taxpayers.
Yes.
Taxpayers. What's the uniformity? Where's the process? What do we do?
But it doesn't have to be uniformity, though. I think that's probably, maybe that's where we seem to get stuck a lot, is wanting a very clear and prescribed process when there isn't one. This is an opportunity that has been put in front of us. We have to choose yes or no, and we have to do that based on all the available information that the library staff have provided us, based on our interpretation of what we see in the JPA and the financials. And then we are the representative body for our communities. And so we have to say, on behalf of the library, this is where we should allocate funds. I'm sure. Of course, everyone would want a new library, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But the opportunity we have in front of us is from the city of Santa Rosa saying, we have these funds that are set aside and we can do this. And if you kick in a little bit more, we can get it bigger and we can make it more impactful, and we can serve a community in the way in which they deserve. I haven't seen Sebastopol come forward with that same proposal. So that's not on the table right now. What's on the table is what Santa Rosa has given us, which is a 10,000 square foot building, which is fine, but we have an opportunity to make it great. So I much prefer us choose the great option.
Do I have a move to approve? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Hey, motion is on the floor.
I'm asking
Let's
for
all
clarification, please, before
So
I may.
I would say, we don't want to go, too far past January because that's when the real design begins. And it will, I would prefer that we can spend our time, quibbling over the carpeting as opposed to the size, And the MOU we have to sign before October 22nd. So whether that is the next commission meeting or another special meeting, the MOU has to be signed by the library before the city council votes on October 22nd.
Yes.
Debatable.
Do I have any objections to adjourning? All right,